Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I'm an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer. And in this video, we're going to talk about the upcoming full moon in Leo on February 1st, a super intense moon that not only is going to continue a series of stellium that we have predicted for this winter, but also prepares us for the following new moon that is going to be a solar eclipse in Aquarius happening on February 17. With the sun in Aquarius, we have reached the very heart of winter, and in this new graphic here, you can see the dates of each full moon and new moon of the season, and we are here with the full moon in Aquarius on February 1st, and as you can see, it will be followed by a new moon in Aquarius that is going to be an eclipse. Below, I have also included the zodiacal virtue indicated by Rudolf Steiner, which in this case of Aquarius is discretion that becomes the power of meditation. That is the ability not to disperse inner strength through speaking and words, but to retain them within ourselves so that we can build up this inner strength and direct it in meditation. Before moving on to the chart, let's take a look at the latest changes in the sky on the calendar. On January 20th, Mercury and the Sun both entered Aquarius, followed by Mars 3 days later on January 23. And this is very important because all these ingress in Aquarius are building up a stellium in the sign, as we're going to see in the chart. On January 26th, we have a very, very important event. Neptune definitely enters Aries and will stay there for 13 years. Now, this ingress is one of the most important events of the year. And finally, we want to note that on January 28, Mars perfects its conjunction with Pluto, a conjunction that still appears in the full moon chart that will take place on February 1st. Here it is. And as you can see, the full moon occurs between the festivals of Imbolc or Candlemas, if you prefer, which falls the following day on February 2nd. And finally, I want to remember this eclipse awaiting us on February 17. This is very important because this full moon is basically a preparation for that event. This is the chart of the full moon, and being such, this means that with the full moon, we reach the peak, the culmination of the manifestation process of the etheric forces of the earth, and in particular that process which started with the last new moon in Capricorn on January 18, that was asking of us, if you remember, a form of purification to prepare us for this moment. And in fact, here we have a lot of tension, as we will see. It is definitely a phase of retrospection, but also of revelation, since the awareness, the light brought about by the full moon, will lead to unpredictable events with the next eclipse. So this chart is very important because it describes a lot of tension, but also an awareness that will culminate with the next eclipse. So the full moon is located at 13 degrees and 3 minutes Leo in the starry image of the crab. And what's interesting is that the moon is in close conjunction with the malefic star Acubens, the left claw of the crab. On the other side of the chart, we have a stellium in Aquarius, a lot of planets, as you can see, formed on the one side by the Mars-Pluto conjunction. That's not an easy conjunction, right? And on the other, the stellium is also formed by this other conjunction between Venus and Mercury. And of course, we have the sun being perfectly centered right on the midpoints of Venus and Mars. This is continuing. We have lunations with the sun perfectly in the middle between Venus and Mars. But this time, the sun is also in the midpoint between Pluto and Mercury, and we will see what this entails. But as you can see, we have a malefic star on the one side, a stellium on the other with Pluto and Mars. So a lot of tension. This is very, very challenging, especially because we are here dealing with fixed energies. Aquarius is a fixed sign, right? So meaning that we have like the tendency not of being open, right? But on the it's the opposite. We are stubborn and we want to bring what we believe is the right thing to do, especially with Aquarius energies. Now, regarding the aspects, we point out the square between Mercury, here it is, the square between Mercury and Uranus, which is very important because this square will become, in the next chart, in the eclipse chart, a square between the eclipse itself and Uranus. So we have a metamorphosis of the square now between Mercury and Uranus, but during the eclipse between Sun and Moon and Uranus. So we have to keep this in mind. And of course, on top of that, we have the Grind Minor Trine between Pluto and Uranus activated by Mars. So this is very, very intense. Also, Saturn is involved, not only because this is a minor Grind Trine, so it is closed by 2 sextiles by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but especially because Saturn is the ancient ruler of Aquarius. So it is the ruler of the stellium itself. So Saturn is crucial in the chart for this very reason. Now, of course, this involvement of Saturn points towards the next Saturn-Neptune conjunction that is going to happen on February 20th. So we are going to experience a super intense February. Let's now tackle the meanings of the chart, starting from the physical significations. So from a physical standpoint, a full moon in Leo brings revelations regarding everything concerning Leo. And Leo, as we know, represents the powerful, the elite, the king, right? The heads of state, important figures, as well as everything we value and care about. Now, the moon is conjunct the star Acubens, a malefic star that embodies the worst natures of Mercury and Saturn, such as cunning and craftiness aimed at criminal intent and personal gain. Now, these shady dynamics are, of course, represented on a planetary level also by the conjunction between Mars and Pluto, of course, because of Pluto, but also by the fact that all these planets in the stellium are actually invisible, or they are under the sun's rays, if not combust, meaning that we cannot see what they are doing. So there's a lot of shadiness in the chart. Now, on top of that, the stellium provides a huge amount of fixed energy that again brings great rigidity, great tension on the Leo-Aquarius axis. And in other words, this leads to a rift between the government and the people. Again, the sun here seeks to compromise through the midpoints between Venus and Mars, which represents peace and war, and between Pluto and Mercury, which represent the occult and communication. So the position of the sun is very, very, very interesting in this regard. In short, this situation is a pressure cooker that could lead to the explosion on a social scale of already very delicate situations. From a psychological standpoint, in fact, people's spirits are quite restless. We know that Aquarius can easily lead to great idealistic impulses, loudly demanding a sense of justice, which, of course, with Aquarius is social justice, especially following mistakes, injustices, and abuses committed by those in power position. On top of that, Mars conjunct Pluto can also lead to dramatic revenge dynamics, even through the use of cunning, again indicated by the star Acubens. Basically, we're all trying here to forcefully move toward freedom, also in the name of our personal value, well represented, of course, by the sign of Leo. Now, in this sense, the square between Mercury and Uranus that I mentioned, this doesn't help, because communication is very tense here. So if we have the planet of communication making this bad square with a very unstable planet, we cannot expect communication to help in this, right? Now again, all this leads to an activation of the grand minor trine between Pluto and Uranus, which is all about mass revolution. So this is definitely explosive. Now from a spiritual perspective, the full moon shines in the starry image of the crab. And this is the crab here. Now, there's definitely, I would say, a real spiritual battle underway, since in astrosophy, Cancer is the constellation of the archangels that are the spirits of basically the folk souls. So they are the spirits guiding the peoples. So just as an individual is guided by their guardian angel, so a people is guided by their archangel. Now, specifically, this constellation represents primarily the impulse that gave rise to materialism. But since the mystery of Golgotha, this constellation contains within it the impulse to overcome materialism itself through the Christ principle. So we have this war between these two impulses. We have the materialism that drags us downward and the Christ principle that lifts us upward. And of course, we can find this balancing act between the two if we look at the distribution of the planets along the constellation of Capricorn. So this is the starry image of Capricorn. We have a lot of planets here, as you can see, but we can really divide them according to the position that they have on the picture. So on the head, that is the noblest and the most elevated part of Capricorn, we have Mars and Pluto, which indicate the possibility of overcoming the fall into matter through Mars, through courage, through willpower and concrete inner action. In other words, through the impulse of gnosis. Now, gnosis is the direct knowledge of the spiritual world. Pluto is definitely a planet that is all about the threshold of the spiritual world. So we have here an indication towards the spiritual world, the direct experience of the spiritual world elevating us through our willpower. On the contrary, on the tail, that is the most decadent part of the animal, we have Mercury and Venus, and of course they represent thinking, Mercury, and feeling, Venus. And this indicates the danger of falling into materialism. And in this regard, remember that star Acubens strengthens the mercurial canning aspect of this planet, right? Now, in general, Willi Zucker, founder of astrosophy, attributed to the head of Capricorn a sense of elevation through the work of the seraphim, as we have discussed in the last video, whereas on the tail of the animal, we have a sense of involution toward the materialistic impulse that is represented by the opposite constellation, that is Cancer. So we find the remedy, if you will, at the very center of the animal. We have again the sun in this very, very interesting position, because again we have at the center the sun as the solar logos, the Christ impulse, the great balancer of our solar system that urges us, as always, to bring clarity, light, but also balance in all these tensions through, of course, the Christ forces. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.